May God bless you all. Today we're going to continue our talk on pastoral wisdom. And we were saying last time that we mentioned the importance of the books of wisdom. And those books of wisdom can offer important guidance for the ministry of pastoral care. And obviously the wisdom literature of the Bible can remind us as chaplains that pastoral care really involves dealing with people who talk of practical, everyday problems rather than just talk about God. And obviously, unlike other parts of ministry that can involve preaching and teaching concerning God and the faith and religion, what is essential for pastoral care is really a comfort with ordinary secular language. So pastoral care is about dealing with the everydayness of life. And the books of wisdom and pastoral care, both of them can be said to be similar in spending most of their time trying to tackle ways in the world of everyday life. So in that sense, wisdom in pastoral care is about learning to talk with responsibility concerning life, with or without always having to talk about God, but man, the human being. So man becomes the object of pastoral care. So this wisdom that we're talking about, in what way can be detected? First of all, when we know something about wisdom, this is important because we can develop it. So a very important thing to develop pastoral wisdom is life experience. We grow in life through experience. So, wisdom in pastoral care always starts from the action, the ministerial action, the pastoral action. We learn how to become chaplains by obviously doing the ministry of chaplains. Now, this ministry of chaplaincy, the doing of chaplaincy, is important because it helps us also to reflect on our experience. And by reflecting on our experience, we can learn to do chaplaincy, to do pastoral care rather, more effectively. Now, the wisdom that concerns pastoral care or spiritual care emerges more or less from bringing together three things. First of all, actually doing pastoral care. Secondly, sharing what has happened in that ministry, probably or most likely in a community of ministers. And thirdly, reflecting on the meaning of those pastoral events and one's development in ministry within that community. Now, there are two philosophers who have said some things about experience that can really help us as chaplains to learn more effectively. The first philosopher is Søren Kierkegaard, and he said that and criticized philosophy's tendency to think instead of act. Søren Kierkegaard's concern was obviously to move away from thinking about what we do abstractly or from a distance. And he wanted, on the other hand, to restore the involvement of the person in what he or she thought and how he or she acted. Now Kierkegaard spoke of the power of individual to form more or less his or her personality out of the events of life. And for him the religious self was an ongoing task to be achieved. Likewise, becoming a wise pastor is always a continued task, a continued endeavor for the minister. We become who we are slowly through ministerial actions. Now Kierkegaard said that one becomes an authentic person through his or her choices to do and to be, and through risking looking at oneself and one's choices. So, becoming oneself is something to be achieved, okay, or won through the experience of life. And Kierkegaard's emphasis on personal involvement and the necessity of risking in looking at oneself and what one has done is an important guide for developing pastoral wisdom. Obviously, in all this there is a great risk of exposing our failures and inadequacy in this kind of self-examination. But according to Kierkegaard's mind, action and risk of the self through examining what one does in ministry is an essential part of learning to be an effective pastor. So pastoral wisdom is developed first of all by doing it through action and also reflection on that action. But it should be a particular kind of action. Pastoral care happens always in action. Action in relationship. The pastor, the chaplain, with the patient. Now, a more recent philosopher, John McMurray, can be helpful here. He was convinced that looking at the self or individual alone was a problem for philosophy and the wrong place to start in understanding life. Like Kierkegaard, he was convinced that the self is first aware and only secondarily that is then becomes a thinker, but also he emphasized, McMurray, the importance of relationship in the understanding of oneself and others. Thus, the individual thinker tends to isolate himself or herself in the thinking process, and thus tends to see theory and practice as separated from each other. And McMurray was convinced that it is through the practical encounter in relationship that really true knowledge emerges. And the other person is discovered both as the resistance to and the support of what one does. The unity of persons in community is not a fusion of self, but it is a unity of persons where each remains a distinct individual, but each realizes himself or herself in and through the other. So God help us that we realize ourselves as chaplains in and through our relationships with one another as chaplains, and also and most of all through our relationship with our patients. And may God bless you all.